Okay guys, so we're ready for our very first lesson on color theory. This class is going to be a lot about how to find your personal color palette. I really don't want to get extremely technical on you, and I feel like it's really fun to understand like how color works and like how the composition is made up, and you know, like the basic stuff that we learn at school and all that. That's really fun. That's awesome. And I even have a color wheel here for you guys today. But just to let you know, like we're gonna kind of like focus more on feeling out color. And I do want to explain like these basics to you before we kind of like get into finding our personal color palette though. So here I have a little chart that I made for you. It's just like basic color theory, and we're gonna go through the color wheel right now. You guys probably, if you went to like school for graphic design or something, you've maybe done something similar to this, but watercolor can be a little bit different. So I'm just gonna do a few exercises here for you so you guys can see just like the basics of how to mix. So first of all, I have a little color wheel for you here. It's just a small version, and I'm just gonna keep it handy here to come back to it and refer once in a while. So I mean, you guys have probably seen this a bunch. It basically looks like a rainbow, which is really fun. And I'm just gonna have this here handy if we ever need to use it. All right, so basic color theory. When we do our mixing, if you had red, blue, or yellow, you could basically make every single color that's in, let's say, this palette. All you really would need is 3 colors, and you could mix them so much that they would end up just being like a huge rainbow of every single color that exists. So that's really important to know. Sometimes people get caught up on like, oh, I don't have the right tones and whatever. And I really would like to let people know that you can end up having a huge variety of colors. You don't need, you know, like the fanciest palettes or anything to have them. You just need to know how to mix your colors correctly. So I want to start out with this white. I tried to clean it the best I could. It's just a blank palette here, and we're gonna start mixing, and I'm gonna do 2 versions of this, so you can also see the difference between using original, like traditional red, blue and yellow, and a bit more modern take on this. So we're gonna start out right now using my pan sets here. I have this one here, and I have my Schminky ones here too, but they're basically the same. It's just a regular watercolor pan set. And you're gonna want to get some of your red. I'm trying to see which red I think is the purest. Try not to choose a red that looks too orangey or too pinky. I mean, I'm telling you, I'm not going to get extremely technical with you here. I'm just going to kind of do it in a more casual way. So I have some red here. All I'm doing is just lathering up my pan set here and getting some into my palette. And if you guys have more questions on transparencies and this kind of stuff and mixing with water, you can go back to the beginner classes. Right now we're just kind of like doing a little mid-tone of water and paint. So I have some nice paint prepared here. Then I'm gonna grab some blue. Just quick tip, try not to grab like a ultramarine blue. It needs to be like a pretty basic pure blue, kind of like that. If your blue is too dark, this exercise really won't work that well. So that's a nice red, a nice blue, and some yellow. I'm just gonna grab some of this yellow here. So I'm using some nice clean water here to get the colors as pure as possible. There we go. So I can just leave my pan set to the side for a bit. And we're just gonna start painting. What we're gonna do right now is fill in this little chart. Just trying to get my brush pretty clean so that we can get some nice pure colors. All right, so before I start, you can see here, try to make your original 3 colors look something like this. Try to get the purest yellow, the purest blue, and the purest red that you can. Here we go. And we're gonna just start filling this out. So here I have that our first one is gonna be our primary color here, which is gonna be this first red. Then I'm gonna have a second primary. Down here. So 3, 4. I have this like set up really kind of geometric here, but you can just basically draw out a triangle and this will work fine too. And we have our pure blue over here. I'm just counting 1, 2, 3, 4. So as I said, I have it laid out pretty kind of fancy here, but I mean, it's perfectly fine if you just do a little triangle with your primary colors. So now we're gonna start filling in secondary colors. And so secondary colors are made by combining all of each 2 and 2 of your primary colors. So for example, if we do yellow with red, we're gonna try to make it half and half. So I'm gonna do a lot of cleaning my brush here because I don't want to contaminate the other colors. So I'm gonna grab some of this yellow and mix it here. I think this needs a little bit more red. There we go. So this is our secondary color. This is going to be a really nice vibrant orange. And we're going to place it here. Our next secondary color is going to be a green. So I'm just going to grab some of this yellow, just dab it on here. Again, cleaning my brush really thoroughly, grabbing some blue and mixing it in here. I feel like I needed a little bit more paint there, so I'm gonna go back and get some more yellow here. Just a little bit more blue. All right, so here we have a nice green. So our second secondary color is this green here. And our last secondary color is going to be a nice violet, mixing red. Here we go. Again, cleaning this brush real nice. And a little bit of blue. There we go. So here for the secondary colors, I tried to get a really kind of equal mix of each primary color. So as you can see now from these 3 colors, now I have 6 colors, and we can keep mixing and mixing and mixing until we eventually get almost like every single color. So what we're gonna do now is tertiary colors. Here we go. And we do this by combining our secondary colors with a little bit more of the primary color that's right next to it. So for example, if we have this orange, we're gonna grab some of this orange and just put a little bit more red into it. Oh, I'm gonna have to make some more. There we go. There we go. So what we have here is a red orange, and that's gonna be right in between our primary and secondary color. Same thing, if we add more yellow to this tone of orange, we're gonna get a yellow orange, which is like, for example, if you take a close look here at my large Schminky set, you can see there's a few different shades of yellow. And what we're gonna be basically creating right now is this shade of yellow, which is more of an orange yellow. So just to let you know that a lot of the colors that you already have in your pan set, you could easily make. Here we go, you can make your own. So I'm just gonna grab some more yellow and add it here. I think it still needs a little bit more. I need to grab some more original yellow. Here we go. So here we have a beautiful, beautiful orange yellow. And then when we mix our primary yellow with our secondary green, just add a little bit more yellow to our green, we're gonna get a really cool, almost like lemony green. And then if you add, I'm gonna create a little bit more green here. I'm running out of my primary, so if you see that I run out of my primaries, I'm just basically adding a little bit more. So if we add more blue to our violet, oh no, wait, where are we? If we add a little bit more blue to our green, we're gonna get a really nice sort of turquoise. Need a little bit more. We're gonna get a really nice turquoise, greenish blue. And then we want to get a tone between our blue and our violet. So I have some violet here. And I'm just going to add a little bit more blue to that tone that we made a while back. I feel it's still a little bit too blue, so I can still go back and add just a tiny bit of red. There we go. So usually for this tone, you'll get a really nice, like, darker blue, which is really pretty. And then we need to get a color between our red and our violet. So I'm gonna grab more red and just add it to our mix. So blue is a, like, pretty powerful color, and sometimes it takes a little bit more red to get this kind of tone. Here we go. And so we have this really, really pretty shade of violet red. So this is like color theory 101. This is just really basically primary colors, secondary colors, and tertiary colors. And for example, if you would keep going and going and going and try to get colors between all of these, you would keep getting more interesting colors. Like, there are still a million different shades of green that you can get by mixing greens and yellows. So I'm hoping you can get the point here that all we really need is our primary colors, and then we can just, like, keep on working with our paints and get super interesting tones out of that. And what I want to show you now is, what I did here was, like, use basic red, yellow, and blue. But for example, if you have, for example, Dr. P.H. Martin paints, which are these here, these colors are more similar to like the colors that we have in a printer. Here we go. This is more similar to like a magenta, for example, instead of a red. What I'm gonna do is do another color wheel using these tones so you guys can see the difference that we get if we use just like a different brand and also different tones. Just because I want you to know that yours doesn't have to look exactly like mine. It all really depends on like what kind of colors you have. So I'm gonna do, so instead of red, I'm gonna do this kind of magenta tone a little bit. It's more like a hot pink. And some people say like these are the real primaries. You'll see how different the colors look. It's pretty impressive. And then this is an ice blue here. And here we go. And if you guys have not used Dr. P.H. Martin's and have questions, you guys can check out my watercolor brands class. I talk a whole lot about them. I'm just making sure this is really clean here. Here we go. So now we have our pure magenta, our pure blue, and our pure yellow. And this is, I think daffodil yellow is like a really nice pure yellow in Dr. P.H. Martin's. I used also an ice blue here. And this moss rose is really fun too. So we're gonna do the exact same thing here, but just using different tones. Okay, so I just finished filling out this second little color wheel here. And the reason I wanted to do two is because color can vary a lot depending on what type of watercolor you use and also what brand and tones. So usually when you use a pan set like the ones that I have here, your reds are going to be a little bit, I wouldn't say dull, but you won't get this like super hot pink that we do in, for example, the Dr. P.H. Martin's. So they're both perfectly fine, but if you notice using our liquid watercolors, we got super, super bright colors. And when we use our pan sets here, they kind of like get a little bit more subtle. It really depends on what you prefer, but I personally, as you'll see when I work through this class, I kind of like mix everything that I have together. It's just a method that I think is really fun in getting new tones and new colors. And the thing that I wanted to talk about before moving on to our next lesson is that within the color wheel, we have a few things going on. One of them is temperature. So from this point to this side, we have warm tones right over here. And from this point down to this point, we have cooler tones. So a red will always try to be a warmer tone, and a yellow is always a warm tone. And blue is always, it's usually more of a cool tone, and pink can go into the cooler tones too. So for example, let's say we have a violet here. So this violet here, it's closer to our red or pink. So it's going to be a warmer sort of hue of violet. And this violet is going to be a cooler violet. So some of the colors can switch from side to side, but your yellow will always be warm and your blue will pretty much always be cool. And another thing that's really important to note here, which I'm going to talk about in the next video, is complementary colors. So you can see it here in our color wheel. The color that's right opposed to your, like for example here, red and green, those are complementary colors. You can see it here as well. For example, orange is a complementary color to blue. And what complementary colors means is that they're the complete opposite. That's basically what it means. There is no blue within an orange, and there is no red within a green. Throughout the years, people have used complementary colors in a lot of different ways. I'm going to talk about it a bit more in the next video, but it's important to know. So complementaries also means that they're opposites. And they can also complement each other when we're doing different types of artwork. And even in graphic design, it's used a whole lot. It's just basic color theory. A lot of the most famous logos you've ever seen are like blue and orange, and there's like a reason for that. Each color brings out the most in the other. So when you put them together, they really pop. And another thing is we have analogous colors too, which are these color harmonies that we create. For example, having all the different greens taking us to a yellow. When we mix these colors together, we create harmony. For example, taking a blue all the way to a pink or a red. If we paint a painting with these kinds of colors, we'll create harmony as well. Those are kind of like fail-safe combinations. So we'll also talk about that a bit more later. But I just wanted to kind of explain the super basics of color theory. We have primary colors, we have secondary colors, we have tertiary colors, and then we have complementary, analogous, and we create harmony. We also have warm colors and cool colors. So basically when we have, like if we were using acrylics and we would add more white paint to our red, we would get like different shades of pink. But remember, if you guys haven't taken, like for example, my watercolor for beginners class, we do a lot of transparency work. So in this case, if we want to get some pinks out of our red, we would just add more and more water to get a more translucent sort of wash. And that way we could create like different tones within just one color. And that's basically it for this very first lesson. I will upload a picture of a color wheel just like this if you guys want to see it for reference. And this is actually a really fun activity to do. Your final project is going to be to create an abstract painting at the end of this class. But I always encourage my students to do all the exercises that I'm doing because I love to see like how you figured it out. And if you have any trouble creating your color wheel, why that was. And some people, for example, have a hard time mixing blues and reds. Your purple can turn out a little bit muddy, but I can help you out along the way. Like just upload whatever you guys want to create here. And I love taking a look at all the stuff that you guys do. So this concludes our basic color theory first color wheel explanation. And in this next video, we are going to go on to complementary colors. Okay, so now we're moving on to complementary colors. And as I explained in our first video, complementaries are the exact opposites. So when we use complementary colors, there is actually an ultimate goal to it. And that means we're gonna try to get our colors to be a bit more dirty. It kind of makes them desaturated. So a lot of people like using like super bright colors, but sometimes we don't want that. Sometimes we want colors that are a bit I guess the word would be dirty. We can like dirty up our colors. So I'm just trying to create like a super basic green here. And I'm gonna show you guys how complementary colors work and what happens when we start mixing them. So I'm just gonna grab some of this red here. Here we go. Okay. So what we're gonna do here is start out by, we have a little bit of just like some pure green here. Right here in this guy, and then here we have some of the like pure red. So what I want to do here is to show you what happens when we start taking our red towards our green and our green towards our red. We're gonna get some really just like interesting things going on here. If we kind of move this around here, you can see that, for example, as our red gets closer to our green, it's going to turn into this sort of like brick red. And I'm going to show you how to do that right now. So our first complementary colors that we're going to use is red and green. And I'm just going to start out with some pure green right here. Just a little kind of bar of green. And we have this little puddle of pure green, and we're just going to start adding some red to it little by little. So as you can see, already our green is starting to transform a whole lot. I'm just going to keep adding red to it. And now we're starting to get these like really kind of rich shades of brown. And this green that I used here is, I think it was a little bit towards the yellow side, so our browns kind of look a little bit orangey too. But what I basically want to show you is how to create browns. That's basically what the complementary activity is for. So you can see as we start to lose our greens by adding reds, we start getting these richer and richer browns. And I'm just going to add a little bit of this brown to our red now. Till we start to get sort of like this brick kind of red. Now I'm adding some more red to the mix. And it eventually takes us back to red. So this is a really interesting activity. A lot of people, when they paint shadows, they like to use complementary colors with this too. So like, for example, if you were trying to paint like a jungle scene and you have leaves in there, where you have sort of like a shadow part, it's really cool to add a little bit of red into there, because you don't want to just like add some like black paint in there. I'm telling you, this complementary color trick really helps out when you want to get sort of like your colors to pop. It's a really, really good activity to do, and I highly recommend using complementary colors in your paintings. We'll also go a bit deeper into that as we keep talking about color mixing. And our second complementary colors are going to be yellow and violet. So you can tell here that violet is the complete opposite of yellow. And again, I told you that in this the first video, but basically what complementary means is that there is absolutely no yellow in a violet and there is no violet in a yellow. So they are complete opposites, and when we start to mix them, some interesting stuff starts to happen. So I'm gonna just pour some like really nice yellow here. Just try to get some pure yellow. Here we go. Okay, so now for our second complementary colors demonstration, we're gonna take a yellow to a violet. And right now I just created this like pure yellow and this pure violet, just to have the colors all ready and mixed. And I'm gonna start with painting some yellow here. And again, just the same as we did with green and red, we're gonna do with yellow and violet. And I have some yellow here, and I'm gonna start adding some violet into the yellow puddle. Very, very softly. If you guys have done my other classes, this is similar to what we did with the transparencies or the gradients, where we start adding slowly. So just a little kind of reminder for anyone that's taken the other classes. This is just adding little by little. And you can see here how I just took a little bit of violet and already I have like this like sort of mustard yellow. And you start to get these like more interesting tones. A little bit of this. Okay, so this is what it looks like when we take yellow to violet. You get all these like interesting range of tones within your color mixing, and you can see that our red and greens are starting to dry. And I just wanted to show you that, for example, with a pan set, you have a lot of different browns here. And these browns can actually be kind of like recreated by mixing your reds and greens. I mean, your eye will start to notice this kind of stuff with time as you practice watercolor mixing. But for example, I can see that this brown looks a lot more like this brown than it does these kind of browns. So this is sort of like a warmer kind of reddish brown, and you could actually get that by doing something like this here. Having like a nice rich red and adding a little bit of green, you could actually recreate this tone right here. So that's just a little tip on how we get these like different browns and different sort of shades of darker tones that are a little bit more like earthy. And for example, this green here would actually be something like this. And that means that it was like a pure green and it has just a little bit of red pigment in it to get this sort of like dirtier tone of green. So just a little like observation there. And now we're gonna start doing our last complementary color exercise, which is gonna be blue to orange. So I'm actually gonna create some fresh blue and orange here. I'm just gonna take a moment and wipe off what I already have here, and we can begin doing our blue and orange. Okay, now for our final complementary activity, we are going to do blue to orange. I was just kind of mixing in a nice pure orange here and some blue. I encourage you guys to do this exercise. It's really interesting to see how you can start to get your colors to be a bit more organic, a little kind of, it's fun to create your own instead of just like grabbing directly from your pan set or whatever you have. It's really cool to be like, oh, I made these different browns, and I swear it'll look way more interesting if you make your own colors. So we're gonna start here with just some orange. Again, remember, complementary colors mean they are the opposite of each other, and they also complement each other, which means that one will make the other one pop. And here we go. So I'm gonna start adding a little bit of blue slowly to our little orange puddle here. And we'll start to get these interesting browns. Okay, so we just finished our orange to blue, and you can tell that I actually had this orange be, now that I look at it here, it looks a little bit more orange yellow than I wanted it to. And when this happens, you can see how, since it has a little bit more yellow in it than it does red, our browns are actually going to turn a little bit greener. So you can see it right here, since yellow and blue turn into green. And so you can see how powerful the combination between yellow and blue is, that it actually like peeks out some really cool grains here. So I really wanted to do this complementary activity. We'll talk more about it later on within the next videos, but just color is so much about like a feeling, and just there's a certain something to it when you really create your own tones, and just like see the difference between, for example, all this range within here. They're all technically different browns, but they really do look totally just a whole nother thing, because they are made out of different tones, but they are still all these like muddy sort of earthy browns in here. So this is a really interesting activity to do. I highly recommend you guys do this too. It would be great if you guys uploaded your charts of your complementary colors. And in the next video, we're gonna go on to temperature.